We've gone through, in probably an understatement to say, a period of sort of turmoil in Westminster. People have seen sort of changes in Prime Minister, changes in cabinet members, various investigations. And I think the overall upshot of that is that sort of people now view Westminster slightly differently, and I think they're much more sort of critical of what they see is going on, down there. What's your take on it, Andrew?
Well, I think actually we've had an astonishing amount of political turbulence, and I think it goes back a little while. And I think there's two things going on here. I think there's been some turbulence, almost globally actually, but certainly within Westminster. And I think there is a problem separate but parallel of standards in our public life. So perhaps I could comment upon each of those.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, the first thing to say is we've had so much politics. If you go back in the last 9 years, 2014 we saw a referendum on Scottish independence, 2015 a general election, 2016 a Brexit vote, 2017 a general election. We've had another general election in 2019, then we've gone into the pandemic. We've had an enormous amount of political upheaval in a very, very short period of time, and people have certainly felt unsettled by it. No question about that. We've also obviously had turbulence within Westminster. I have to say I'm very happy with the way things have worked out. I've been part of Team Rishi from the very beginning, and I think we've got an extremely high calibre individual who is just focused upon getting stuff done, which is I think exactly what we need. For just going to the other point I mentioned a moment ago about standards in our public life.
And is this specifically, is it the Nolan principles? Is that
yes,
sort of...
Yes, I think the Nolan principles are sound principles. People overwhelmingly in our political system, whether it's local government or national government, they are there for the right reasons. They want to make a difference to their communities. And that applies across all political parties. But at the same time, we have some people who simply do not manage to live up to what is required of them. And we've seen that in Westminster.
And just to be clear, that's in all parties.
Oh yes.
It's not something that people can point a finger at a single party. We've seen that across the board, really, haven't we?
We have, and I think that suggests that the problems are more cultural and a bit more deep-seated. Since I became an MP in 2010, we have seen 8 current or former Labour MPs given custodial sentences, 2 Conservatives, 1 Liberal Democrat, 1 Scottish Nationalist. That is a lot. That really is a lot. And then we've had people had to stand down from Parliament for various reasons. We had 2 by-elections in the last few months caused by MPs having to leave from having sexually harassed their staff. Those 2 were Labour MPs, but prior to that we'd had 2 Conservative MPs had to leave Parliament as well. So this isn't a party political issue. I think it's a broader political class issue. And I am strongly in favour of all the parties working together to improve the culture and operational practices in Westminster and having zero tolerance of people who fail. So I think the opportunity to represent your home area in public life, which is what I do in Harrogate and Knaresborough, is the privilege of a lifetime. Now, I'm aware that people have had my job before me, they will have my job after me, but I have the baton now and I'm focused upon making our area even better. And if anybody isn't doing that in their areas, we need to be asking why. So there's a lot of work taking place to improve the standards. And I think there's going to be more that will come out over the course of the next few months. But if I could just highlight one particular piece. Some of the standards in Westminster are to do with the way that MP structures their offices. And it's not a straightforward matter because different people have got different ways of operating.
Just to understand then,
right.
When a Member of Parliament receives a salary,
yes,
which, a lot of people criticise, but it's not in the bigger picture of comparable salaries, it's not actually a big salary. That's an observation. And you receive expenses to run a MP's office. Is that correct? So you have staff.
That is correct. Yes, there's an amount of money allocated to each MP. They don't receive the money. The money is held by a body, an independent body called IPSA, Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority, and they hold the cash, and they will pay invoices to perhaps hire an office, such as the one we're sitting in, or the salaries of an MP's team. And my team are based here, but the point is different people structure things in different ways. Some people have some support staff in Westminster. Some people have all their team in Westminster and none in their constituency. I've taken the completely opposite approach to that. All of my team are here in Harrogate and Knaresborough, and I've never ever had anybody in Westminster. The reason, that is a very unusual position, by the way. In fact, I think it's unique. But the reason I did that was simply to, I want all my team focused upon making our area even better in local campaigns and being approachable and accessible. So it's a very local view of how we can make a difference. But different people do things in different ways, and that's entirely right. People will make their choices. So what we're trying to do, there's a piece of work being run by the Speaker, and it's called the Speakers' Conference. We haven't had a Speakers' Conference in Parliament for a long time. It's the first in my time there. And we're looking at specifically the contracts that people have working in and around Westminster, what kind of support they have in terms of personnel issues. If they have an issue, where can they go for support? And we're taking evidence from different parliaments, or from good workplace practices, perhaps from other parts of the public sector, or from academia, or from the private sector. It's all about how we can make a much more open, modern and inclusive working environment in Westminster, and through that get better public policy. And I'm at the heart of that. There's about 12 of us on this commission. More will emerge over time. It isn't in the news yet. In fact, I've not spoken to anybody about it until now. But we've been meeting for a little while, and we will continue to take evidence and then draw some conclusions. And we want to make a material difference to the operational practices in Westminster and around the political system as a whole. And it's been driven by the Speaker. And there's about 12 of us, all parties involved in this, of course. So it's not a party political issue. Everybody recognises there's a problem and is working to make it better.
And would that also work to give greater visibility? Because I think people are very suspicious now, aren't they? They look at perhaps a lot of individuals, a councillor or an MP, anyone in a kind of a public kind of role, and they're looking for an agenda. Why is that person in that role? And then there's been sort of news stories about second jobs and obviously around the expenses claims or over, claiming too much. Will that give greater visibility and then, is the aim to give greater confidence?
Yeah, I think transparency is a fantastic thing. It shines a light and will expose poor practices. So transparency is a very good thing. The expenses crisis was before I became an MP, but it was clearly an absolutely critical moment for Parliament, and things changed on the back of it. And rightly, it was a disaster. We'd seen dreadful things, and people went to jail on the back of it. So obviously this was really serious. And there is an element of, that was 15 years ago now. What is the next stage in how we can modernise and make better our working practices? Things have changed a lot in the modern workplace, but that perhaps hasn't happened in Westminster or across politics more broadly. How do we make that happen?